Welcome to Women Together. My name is Antoinette, and I am your host today. And for our Women Together sessions, it's a joy to be together. So if you want to just go into gallery mode, you can go in and say hello by just waving to everybody. And you can start typing directly in the chat. For those of you who haven't already, you can just say hello, where you're coming from. It's a joy to just kind of connect and see where we're all coming from and what space we are, space and place we're holding and landing in today. So as we land in this digital space, to acknowledge the place that we're in. Wonderful. So we've got Delray Beach, Halifax, Nova Scotia, New York, Winter Park, Florida, Southern California, Huntington Beach, Chicago. We're starting to melt. Wonderful. Ossining, New York, Manchester by the Sea. It's wonderful to see faces and names that we've seen before, and a warm welcome to those of you who may be new and joining us for the first time. We are connecting together in this way through Eileen Fisher's Women Together program, in part because we started to do these events and connections together in person and in a kind of hybrid way, which at the time was quite innovative, felt very new. We had in-person and online experience happening at the same time. And then when the pandemic hit, we transitioned to being completely online with these at first daily and then weekly connections. And we really do feel a magic that happens when we come together. And it's actually been 2 weeks, I think, since our last connect, and I can feel it. I feel the difference of not having been all together last week. So I just acknowledge that we have been coming together in community and building connection with one another, and that we've also been welcoming and opening. I know a lot of people have brought their friends and sisters in, so it's wonderful to just be building and expanding in this way our connection and community together. So one of the things that we do is just a tiny practice. It's a short hour together that we have, but we try to find some tiny practices that we can do to just let ourselves land and deal with disruption of all kinds. So whether it's the global pandemic or some external force or something more internal, we find tiny practices rather than kind of everything has to change right away, right now. Tiny practices, small steps that we can do. I see a little cat in the video. I see a lot of different people and places. So it's wonderful to just be in each other's homes and hearts and connection together. So what we'll do first is just take a moment of stillness, landing together and just being with one another. I have a little singing bowl that we have in Eileen Fisher conference rooms, and we have been really just using this as a way to move from meeting to meeting or place to place and just kind of let go of what's happened before this moment and just come back to a place of landing and grounded center connection with the space around us and within ourselves. So if you can just get both feet flat on the ground, if that's comfortable for you. Just close your eyes or lower your gaze. And tune into the breath. Just remembering that the breath is always there. And that the breath itself can ease the nervous system. I'll ring the bell to give us a moment of stillness, and I'll ring the bell to bring us back. Just coming back to reconnecting with our screen and each other. Sometimes there are things that come up in that moment of stillness, and sometimes it's, our minds start to wander, we start to go off in another direction. So even after that, I invite us back to our connection with each other. Um, and, really just engaging in a process of listening to ourselves and one another. We have different ways to engage. So if you're in Zoom, we will move into breakout rooms in about 20 minutes. And if you're on Zoom or on YouTube, you can type directly in the chat or the comment section and share with one another right there. And the topic today is on being our best selves. And I'm curious what brought us here today in general, maybe just to connect with each other, but if there's something specific about this topic on being our best selves. And I'll share a little bit about some of our thinking and some of the thinking of our teachers and people we admire. And we'll do a little tiny practice together before we go into the breakouts. But just if there's anything that brought you here today, you can type it directly in the chat. So what brought you here around women together or around being our best selves and whatever that may mean for you? I'll just say from my perspective on being our best selves, I find that it's a loaded topic. Like I almost put pressure on myself and I'm like, oh, I have to be my best self. What does that mean? So is that necessary or not? Is a question. But there's also an element of when I quiet down, then there's something inside. She's there. There's something that's kind of, it's a voice or, something might maybe, higher consciousness. I don't know. But there's something there that's like, oh yeah, she's there all the time. And when I can tune in and operate from that place, then something else starts to happen. So, I don't just operate from my old patterns. So we have a few comments here that from Lisa, it feels like home base, and Grace Ann, really the essence of being our best selves is all we have control over. Ellen, needing to connect with others and trying to overcome many obstacles to being the person I want to be. Jerry, I come for the sense of connection that I have trouble finding during the pandemic. Yeah. AC, it's time to pull together and give to others to get us out of this pandemic. Sandy, always trying to be more authentic. I love this, Linda. I just love women getting together to support and better ourselves. Constant listening and learning from each other. That's the key. Absolutely. Yeah. Lee, I want to explore what best means, or can I be good enough to matter? Mattering to each one of us and to ourselves is a very good place to start. Mary Beth, good to see you. The world needs the best of all of us now. We need vaccines that work, and we need ourselves to bring our best out now in the world too. Lakshmi, there's a whole Bridgerton conversation going on in the chat and Zoom over here. So if you're not engaged, that's one way to tune into our best selves, right? Take a little rest, watch some Bridgerton and come back. Wonderful. All right, find a few more. Let's see. Grounding. It's always grounding coming together with this group. Been pretty wound up. Wonderful. Diana's recovering from total hip replacement surgery. So we're sending you our thoughts and care. Marcia, I need to get back to being myself. I've been lost recently due to conditions. I think that's really interesting. It's that, I kind of go out of myself. I start doing all these things. I go out to be with someone else and their things. So yeah, how do I just come back to myself? Beautiful. Patricia, this time allows me to just be with others who bring the same quiet energy that renews me. I look forward to this hour so much. Beautiful. Yeah, Ellen is coming in for nurturing. And a lot of us are needing that nurture from each other. And often what I find is that when I'm needing it is the time that I actually need to give it. So when I give it, I also get it back. Um, so wonderful. Thank you for sharing some of these thoughts in the chat and in the comments area, in YouTube, adding self-compassion to what makes me my best self, being authentic. So we have a lot of reasons to be coming together today. And I thought I'd share a few of my just bits of thinking. But I also wanted to share, this month is Black History Month, and some of my favorite teachers and writers have been Black women. And I thought it would be, we'll do a celebrating women session in March, on March 9th. But I just thought to share some quotes from some of my favorites. So one is from Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, and she says, "Without inner change, there can be no outer change." And I think about that often when I'm trying to do anything in the world. But I think about it even just as I think about how to be my best self, or how to, when I'm looking for any kind of change in the world, I'm like, oh, well, if I can just be my best self and apply that, then I'll, everything will be better. Everything will be different. And I think part of that is definitely true. And I also notice that in times of disruption, I start blaming other people. I start blaming the world. I start blaming anyone else. And I think this is true for many of us, but I think about, from my little perch, I think I know how the world should look. I think I know, what should happen. And, I read the news and I'm like, oh, well, they should have done this. So, or it should look like that. And what I think a lot about is, what is it that keeps these kind of disconnects of, what's happening in our world in place. And what I love about what Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams said is that without inner change, there can be no outer change. And so, and I read somewhere that the war is internal. And I see that as being a kind of, when we are battling ourselves and, saying, oh, well, I wish I could be like this, or, even there's just a part of ourselves that we're up against. I often find that I will choose to blame someone else rather than looking at that internal person, that internal place where I can hold myself accountable. So there's just a little piece there of, how do I actually give myself the space to breathe and to be not one, not the other, but to let all of those voices that are internal just make themselves known and be there. They are already there, they're with us. So that all of those parts of ourselves, instead of fighting that war with ourselves, to just come to a place of acceptance within ourselves. So what I've been thinking a lot about is also just how we tune into ourselves, not being about adding more, but just recognizing what's there. I love this, what Monica just said, holding self accountable, but being kind to self is sometimes a challenge for me. So how do we hold those internal expectations or desires, or, what I want to be or become, in a way that's kind, and in a way that is, oh, there she is. It's got a little bit of, I think of Shauna Shapiro when she's come in and said, good morning, I love you, to us, where we put a hand on a heart and we just say, I love you. And we're talking to ourselves, and we can just say that to ourselves. And yes, hold that acceptance and patience. So there are a few ways to do that. And another woman who I'm inspired by is Audre Lorde, who described herself as a Black lesbian mother, warrior, poet. And I love the intersections of all of those aspects of self. It makes me think of all the different aspects of myself that I have. And she says, only by learning to live in harmony with your contradictions can you keep it all afloat. It's from one of her essays, Sister Outsider. She says, only by learning to live in harmony with your contradictions can you keep it all afloat. So I think of that as a wonderful way to just be with our contradictions. It's not about pushing one or the other, blaming one or the other. And only when we find that peace within ourselves of being with our contradictions will we have what Angel Kyoto Williams was talking about, that inner change, because part of that inner change is self-acceptance. So there's one other quote that I wanted to read, and I'll share this one in the chat too. And this one's also from Angel Kyoto Williams. She says, you, just as you are, in your life here right now, are all there is and all you need to know. You don't have to do anything special. Mostly, you have to be open to meeting face to face and even dancing with the truth that pertains to your life right now. You have to find a way to collect your fractured pieces, examine them, and then accept them as part of who you are. I'll just put that in the chat here. And I think that's the key, to just be with what is, collecting our fractured pieces, not blaming the fractured pieces, not pushing them outside of ourselves, but just being with those fractured pieces, examining them and accepting them as a part of who we are. Easier said than done, right? And I think it's possible. So perhaps we take a moment and just land, and maybe we'll start with examining our fractured pieces and also tuning into that inner voice and seeing what comes up. So I'll just do a little guided meditation for us about that. I'll start by reading her quote again. But before I do that, I'll just invite us into a centering practice. So we've done this, if you've been with us before, a Wendy Palmer practice of centering, and a reminder that it's not just about centering into this like small s self, this like little personality that's just trying to do everything in the world. It's about centering into our place and space that is maybe just a little bit beyond us. So if you can, get both feet flat on the ground and just feel the energy of grounded connection. And from that, feel a sense of uplift, maybe on the inhale or exhale, feeling a little bit of uplift in the spine. Sending your energy out, maybe through your fingertips, and just feeling a sense of connection to the space beyond your body. And then think of something that makes you smile. Just being in this centered place, connected to the space around you. I'll read that quote again. You, just as you are, and your life here, right now, are all there is and all you need to know. You don't have to do anything special. Mostly, you have to be open to meeting face to face and even dancing with the truth that pertains to your life right now. You have to find a way to collect your fractured pieces, examine them, and then accept them as part of who you are. So for a moment, just tuning into the breath. You can close your eyes or lower your gaze. Oftentimes, those fractured pieces show up as a voice of judgment, a voice of cynicism, or a voice of fear. And if any of those are with you now, You can just invite them in and hear what they have to say. And perhaps that voice is upset or angry or scared. And that's okay. Maybe acknowledge the feeling that comes with that. And perhaps that voice or that piece has been there to protect you or to teach you. And perhaps she has something to share with you. And for a moment, I'd like to invite you to feel your energy and attention just lifting up, and maybe seeing your body from outside. Maybe filling the room or the building that you're in. Just zooming out a little bit. And as you zoom out, maybe you zoom out past the country or the globe. Just finding yourself maybe in space. Maybe there's someone here for you, or maybe there's another place where you feel very comfortable. Maybe it's by the sea. But there is that version of you, your best self. Maybe she's a few years ahead. But just for a few moments, we're going to sit with her. And the two of you together can look back at that woman sitting in the chair, struggling with her fractured pieces. Perhaps there's a phrase, something, a message that she or you from this place have to share with that woman sitting in the chair. When you're ready, you can thank her and let her continue on her way. And in this place, another piece of wisdom from Audre Lorde. She says, when I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. You can begin to zoom back in, just being in this body, on this chair, in this place, in this room. Just knowing that you can take that part of yourself with you everywhere. And you can perhaps take out a piece of paper and a pen or a journal and just jot down what came up for you. Perhaps if it's helpful, you can write down what came up in those fractured pieces. Was there a voice of judgment, of cynicism, of fear that came up? And maybe if you have a thank you to those fractured pieces, if there was a thank you that came up, you can jot that down. And if there was a message, maybe from your own best self or yourself as you zoomed out a little bit, just write that down. And in just a few moments, we'll turn to each other. But I love what's already come up in the chat. I'm struck that my current self is as good as it is. And my best self loves and accepts my worst self. It's pretty wonderful to just have that kind of perspective just for a few moments, even in our day, that we can tune in to that place of acceptance within ourselves. So, and that may not be true for everyone. We each have our own experiences, and for some of us, it may have landed or looked quite different. So, what we'll do now is turn to each other and just share with one another. And a reminder of our practice of generous listening. As we turn to each other, we may not know what has come before this moment. I often say we don't know what the other person had for breakfast, let alone their years of life experience before this one. So we'll just tune into our best selves as we go into this to this time together. We'll have about 20 minutes, so each person will have a few minutes, and just making sure that we make room for each other to speak. So please enjoy your time together. If you are on YouTube, I look forward to seeing you next week, and we will be welcoming Arowana Hayashi, one of our favorite teachers, to join us again. So enjoy your 20 minutes together, and we'll see you back around 10 minutes before the top of the hour.